Hello and welcome to Lecture 5 on the essentials of signal processing. We wrapped up last week with the conclusion that the Fourier series for periodic signals is conceptually interesting but not yet useful for discrete time signals. In this lecture we're going to develop Fourier transforms that are often used in discrete time signal processing, namely the discrete time Fourier transform or DTFT and the discrete Fourier transform or DFT. So the learning goals for this week are: first, the interpretation of the DTFT and DFT, much like we did for the Fourier series. Second, the properties of the DTFT and DFT. Third, the relationship between Fourier series, discrete time Fourier transform and discrete Fourier transform. And finally, fourth, the actual calculation by hand of DTFT and DFTs of usually simple signals. For more realistic signals, consisting of thousands of samples, we will have to rely on software implementation of the DFT. A term that you may have heard is the FFT. This fast Fourier transform is a very efficient implementation of the DFT, which we will discuss in more detail in lecture number 7. In this course we focus on the DTFT and the DFT for discrete time signals. It is good to realize that there are many more different types of transforms like these out there for different signal types and different purposes. We will briefly see the continuous time Fourier transform, but we also have the complex Fourier transform, the Z transform, the Laplace transform, the S transform, the wavelet transform and more. This overview shows you the 4 forms of the Fourier transforms we are dealing with. Top right, the Fourier series that you should know by now. At the bottom right, the continuous time Fourier transform, which will serve only as a brief layover for us. Bottom left, the discrete time Fourier transform. And finally, top left, the discrete Fourier transform. The DTFT is commonly used in the description and analysis of algorithms that use Fourier transforms. In software and hardware, however, the DFT is implemented and hence applied in practice. We will come to that later. To start, I'm going to show you how we go from the Fourier series to the discrete time Fourier transform. I will do that fairly informally, skipping the underlying and solid mathematical foundations. If you're interested, there's plenty of literature available on the mathematical foundations of Fourier transforms. As I said before, I want to emphasize the interpretation of the equations and the calculated DFT coefficients. The Fourier series are not useful to us because they assume periodic and continuous time signals. Let us try to remove those assumptions. Here is the formulation of the Fourier synthesis and analysis expressed in Hertz frequency and radial frequency. First, for non-periodic signals, we can also say that the fundamental period is infinite. If we put that in the analysis expression, the integration boundaries change, simultaneously absorbing the 1 over t fundamental to minus infinity and infinity. The value of k times omega fundamental, which is a discrete quantity, now becomes a continuous valued omega. Note that the radial frequency omega runs now from minus infinity to plus infinity. The resulting continuous time Fourier transform x of j omega now replaces the Fourier series coefficients a of k in the synthesis expression, giving this as a result. The summation over the discrete set a of k becomes an integral over omega. In these expressions, it turns out that we also need a normalization factor, 1 over 2 pi in this case. Sometimes this normalization is put in the Fourier synthesis expression, as here, sometimes in the Fourier analysis, and sometimes both have a factor of 1 over the square root of 2 pi. The continuous time Fourier transform can be used for arbitrary but continuous time signals. Now let us move to discrete time. We sample x of t so that the time integral in the Fourier analysis becomes a sum over n. The omega remains, but, as we have seen before, it is a relative radial frequency with maximum value pi. That is why we often indicate omega with a hat. The resulting expression for x of e to the power j omega hat is the discrete time Fourier transform. You may be wondering about the terms between the brackets, namely e to the power j omega, and earlier you saw the term j omega. The reason is that these transforms are special cases of the general Laplace and Z transform. A deeper explanation of these relations is beyond the scope of this course. The discrete time synthesis expression is very similar to the continuous time version, with only the integral boundaries changed to minus pi and plus pi. So here we are. This is the discrete time Fourier transform, which allows us to transform any discrete time signal. Of course, this must be the equation of the week. The DTFT has two important properties. First, like Fourier series, for real valued x of n, the amplitude and phase spectra exhibit symmetries, here informally illustrated for a discrete time sinusoidal signal. Second, and that is new, the spectrum is periodic over 2 pi, meaning that only within a 2 pi interval the DTFT values are unique. For that reason, the DTFT is usually plotted for omega between minus pi and plus pi. Realize again that this corresponds to the observation in lecture 3, namely that due to the sampling theorem, the maximum digital frequency is pi. Here's an example of the DTFT of a simple signal. I remind you that this expression tells you that in the given discrete time signal, there exists a complex discrete time exponential e to the power j omega n with an amplitude and a phase given by the associated DTFT coefficient. For instance, if we take the digital frequency omega is pi over 3, we get this DTFT coefficient, which has an amplitude of 2 and a phase of minus pi over 3. In general, we need numerical methods to plot the full amplitude and phase spectrum. But in some special cases, like this one, we can rewrite the result so that the magnitude and phase appear directly in the DTFT expression. These can now be plotted quite easily, but again, this only works in special cases. In many cases, the plotting and interpretation of the phase spectrum is not easy, especially since the phase is constrained to the interval minus pi pi, the so-called phase wrapping. Here is an example of a signal that consists of a sinusoidal component and random degradations. The amplitude spectrum clearly shows the sinusoidal component and its digital frequency. The phase spectrum, however, is not that useful. In practice, we therefore often only look at the magnitude of the DTFT, as in these spectrograms. But we must of course not forget that the phase is an essential component of the DTFT that we cannot simply throw away. Let us now make the final step and develop the DFT, the discrete Fourier transform. The only two things we need to fix in the DTFT are, first, we do not have an infinite number of samples in x of n, and second, we need a discrete set of radial frequencies and not a continuous omega as in the DTFT. We resolve this by limiting the summation in the DTFT to n input samples of the signal xn, while simultaneously taking n equidistant samples of omega. In other words, we sample the frequency axis. This then finally leads to the DFT analysis and synthesis expression. We have come a long way from the Fourier series, but the structure of these equations is still the same. A sum over signal samples or Fourier coefficients multiplied by complex exponentials. There are four noteworthy things to say about the analysis or forward DFT and its counterpart, the synthesis or inverse DFT. First, again, we need a normalization factor, in this case 1 over n, either in the forward or inverse DFT, or split as a factor of 1 over the square root of n in both equations. In the NumPy function, the normalization goes with the inverse DFT. Second, the forward and inverse DFT equations are nearly the same, except for the plus or minus sign in the complex exponentials. Software functions and hardware for forward and inverse DFTs are therefore basically the same. Third, the DFT expression can also be read as a matrix vector multiplication. For instance, if we take the simple case of n is 4, the DFT expression becomes a multiplication of a 4x4 matrix and a vector of 4 signal samples. You see a highly structured 4x4 Fourier matrix, which in fact is the key to the efficient implementation of the FFT, as we will see later. Finally, if we substitute k is 0, we get this expression, which is nothing but the sum of all signal samples. If you divide that by the number of samples, you obtain the mean signal value. Forcing this DFT coefficient to 0 will effectively subtract the mean of each signal sample. Let us take the same signal as before and calculate the DFT. Since there are only 3 non-zero values, we need to decide how many input samples to use. For instance, for n is 16, we have 13 zero values. Here is the general DFT result for n is 16 and next all 16 DFT coefficients. We can also plot the amplitude spectrum. I think you can clearly see the similarity of this result with the DTFT result shown previously. Especially if we take a larger value for n, for instance n is 64. Comparing the two, we see that the DFT essentially calculates the coefficients at sampled frequencies in the interval 0 to 2 pi. But of course, because of the periodicity, that also gives us the values for minus pi to 0. Once you start coding with the DFT, you should be aware of this aspect. For instance, due to the symmetry properties for real valued signals, the DFT coefficient 1 and n must be complex conjugated. I recommend that you carefully study the relationship between the index k of the DFT, the continuous digital frequency omega hat, and the physical frequency as illustrated here. Some of the Python exercises will help you understanding this relationship. Let me go back to this example, shown in lecture 4. I already told you need to be able to interpret these numbers. I hope you now do. First, you see the complex conjugated symmetry. Second, you know that at midpoint, here the value minus 14.2, the DFT coefficient corresponds to the radial digital frequency pi, or in other words, the amplitude of the continuous time cosine at Nyquist frequency. And third, you now know that a number such as 2.5 plus 1.7j means that the signal xn contains a discrete time complex exponential, or if you like cosine and sine combination, with an amplitude equal to the magnitude of 3.5 plus 1.7j, which is 3.02, and a phase of the arctang 1.7 over 2.5 is 0.19 pi. In other words, we now know the frequency, its amplitude and its position relative to n is 0. Here are your 2 theory exercises to solve prior to the next exercise session. First, given this discrete time signal, calculate the DTFT and plot the amplitude and phase spectrum. Second, given this discrete time signal, find the DFT coefficients for a length n is 8 DFT. Well, that's it for this week. Goodbye and until the next Essentials.